Hi. So, I'm going to go over quite a bit. And I'm going to try to do it in order as best as I possibly can. And stay focused. I'll write about that one later. Anyway, so I made a few notations because I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, and I have quite a few medical issues that are quite well known. So I'm going to start with, there was a teenage boy that I had met named Phillip Makowski. Now later, I wound up doing a modeling thing at Robert Dombrowski's studio, but I don't know if it's the same thing. So that is what it is. But in reference to Phillip Makowski, met him during one of these things that people in Crystal Lake do. Crystal Lake, Illinois, to be specific. And I didn't really want to do it because I had already had that experience and I was good without it again. But did it with a friend who wanted to go. Her name was Christina. She was from Cary Grove. Don't remember where we met. But she wanted to do that. She saw Phillip Makowski's friend Chris wanted to pull over and speak. Christina and Chris or something started dating. Now, both of them, Chris, whatever his last name was, and Phillip Makowski said they were on the Lake in the Hills football team. Chris said he was a cornerback, and Phillip Makowski said he was an offensive lineman. Both were, well, Chris was about this tall, Phillip was about this tall. Chris was fairly slender in height, or whatever, body. And Phillip was stockier and broader shoulders. Both were pale in complexion. One day when speaking with Phillip's dad, who worked at the Michelin Goodyear Tire garage in Crystal Lake, near Andy's restaurant, Phillip's dad, and he was tall, shorter than Chris, but brunette hair, and kind of longer, well, longer than mine. Not by much, but whatchamacallit, his mom was about my height, blonde hair, about here, not natural. And spoke with them a long time. Though Phillip Makowski and I dated only a month, if that. Phillip wanted to lose his virginity to me, and he did. But that wasn't enough for me to want to stay in a relationship with him at all. But he decided he wanted to end the relationship, as he said, because I told his friend Chris that I found him physically more attractive than Phillip Makowski. Chris, I think, was a junior, kind of like me, whereas Phillip was a sophomore back in 1999. Around the time of February is what my notations say, but I'm, bad with time. But shortly after, the way to kind of verify the timing would be whenever Phillip Makowski got a job at the Goodyear Michelin place in Crystal Lake. They lived in a townhouse, or I think it's more of a townhouse, but with names. Could have been a condominium. So I'm going to show you a picture that I drew up. I didn't see the second story, but I'm going off of what I can. So the first story is this, where you enter here, and then this is kind of like a great room area. I remember the kitchen over here, and like I think the dining room was over here. There's like an eat-in kitchen bay area, bay window area, the living room, the staircase with the half bathroom, and then the back patio had a wooden frame for it, and there were fields. So the second story, I know that the stairs were, I think, over here, and there was 3-bedroom and a full bath in between the 2 other bedrooms, and then the master bedroom having its own bathroom. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there was a patio outside of the master bedroom, but I'm not 100% certain on that. But it was a white set of buildings, or an off-white, either way, at that time. Let's see. So yeah, that was pretty much it. So there was a point in time, I had made a match dating profile, and the first individual I met with went to LSU, supposedly graduated as an anesthesiologist, was going through a divorce. Had a daughter named Haley, and I was more of a more friendly than actually dating. We never actually did anything like that. But that didn't last long because he wound up getting back with his baby mama. I did get to meet the baby mama. She was a blonde, but not natural. About my height, a little bit broader shoulders than mine, and her hair was kind of down to here. She had left, supposedly, that I can't remember his name, but he was a ginger, that guy, ironically. And then I wound up meeting Lawrence, and then, anyway. So, and not being rude towards Lawrence, I kind of figured certain things at this point. Could be wrong, but I have this weird feeling since he was in the Navy and we discussed scuba diving. Unlike the anesthesiologist and I. And so, after a situation occurred, after the male I was engaged to, named Sean McCall, had gone to basic training. There was a situation with a scuba diver named Joe that, looking back now, kind of looked like a longer hair version of Chris, with fake blonde hair. So I was dealing with that sort of stuff. I couldn't figure out what to do at all. Didn't have anybody to ask. Hadn't dealt with that in a non legal marriage way. And so there was already issues between Sean McCall and I because of what his ex-girlfriend Leslie was saying in email. And when Phillip Omstead, or online Darko, or Danny Darko or something on FetLife in 2010, less than 2 weeks after what occurred, reference to scuba diving, he wanted to meet for a brunch because there were a munch, and he said he had a bunch of questions about the lifestyle, and I was like, okay, well, the Denton Munch is where we met and sat in a corner booth, which is really, really ironic because when Sean McCall and I got back together, his dad had mentioned about remembering a corner booth. Like, remember corner booth. If I'm not mistaken, during one of the times my daughter was in the hospital at Denton Behavioral Health, Sean McCall and I stopped to get something to eat because it was a long drive between Carrollton to Denton and back, and he hadn't had lunch, so we stopped somewhere after spending time with my daughter for the Fort Worth Zoo issue. And he seemingly knew a lot more about not just Sean McCall than what minimal was written about on FetLife. But also in reference to anything on Facebook. Seemed a little bit weird now that I'm taking a look back. Phillip also seemed to know quite a bit about Illinois, despite saying he went to college at LSU for a musical degree. And I don't think I had posted the pictures of the ocean yet on FetLife by that time. I think it was only on Facebook. So if they're the same person, this is ridiculous. But anyway, March or April when the munch was. Ironically, Sean McCall's ex-girlfriend, Leslie, lived in Plano, so did Sean McCall, and then Phillip's apartment and his mom and stepdad David lived in Plano in a house. Though the male, so after breaking up with Phillip, before he wound up moving into the house, of the people who were running the munch in Denton at that time, the male that was married to the female kind of looked like the male from when I went to the rave and I got in trouble for that, with the Article 15, who was outside my barracks room door after having been in the hospital and had the nerve to yell at me after he was the one who gave me the tulip-shaped flowers, saying they were a different type of headache medication, but were like Flintstones chewable vitamins. It tasted like grape. Irony. But the wife did not look like who claimed to be Princess Jasmine, who had given me the Advil at that time. After one or two, maybe three of the meetings with Phillip in the daytime to talk, he said something. We wound up meeting another time, and it was at nighttime, and went out to eat and talk. And on my way back, there was a snowstorm that came out of nowhere, out of the blue, and I avoided a collision because of the whiteout. Because the semi-truck had no markings on the back, and it was white. It was snowing. It didn't have his four-ways on. It was sitting in the middle of the highway. Later on, there were issues. I had already broken up with Sean because I could not handle what had occurred with the Scuba Joe guy issue, as well as the Leslie aspect, as well as Phillip whining about certain things, then trying to make sure my daughter was okay while making sure my son was okay. It was a bit much, while also dealing with my ex-in-laws, and more in specific, Susie Marie Nicholas Lopez, and then my biological family, and that, specifically my mother, Anna Louise Lally Hom. Lally is her maiden last name. Hom is the married last name. She taught as a substitute teacher in New Jersey with the last name of Lally, if that is of any assistance, before working at Prudential. Let's see. So then there was an issue in reference to he had an argument. That's how he had an argument with his mom and stepdad, and something happened right before the video game that shouldn't have got my son, called Red something Redemption, at Phillip's recommendation because of me not knowing video games or any of that stuff and not understanding it. Only time I allowed my son, James, to debate with me when it came to the ratings. And afterwards, he didn't. Like, unless it was a military one, which I didn't have a problem with him with the military ones. But like the fan fiction or fantasy or whatever, that was where the ratings just stuck. So Phillip was educated real quick that I was not okay with that. So then the day of the Fort Worth Zoo, after I had repeatedly asked the school if I could switch and be on field trip for my daughter because I had a feeling, I was repeatedly told no by Ms. Hatcher. I think that's about when the snowstorm happened in Dallas. Like the first or second time I had asked her to switch over, because I usually would, my plan was to switch from one to the other for their field trips, but I had this really weird feeling, even though the year before I had been a chaperone on the field trip. I was told I couldn't because they had enough and they didn't need anyone like me to distract parents and the children. I had done enough, re-emphasizing the bias. Anyway, which Sean McCall knew about, not to the level of, but knew about, because I told him about the trying to get her into special needs. Before the field trip, over a year and a half, Phillip Omstead said that his mom and stepdad met at the sanctuary, which is apparently now closed, back in the 90s, and they got married and all that sort of stuff. I don't remember meeting. I could have, I don't know. I don't remember, at least, because a lot of stuff was going on at the time. And so, then, whatchamacallit, he had said that his biological dad, he never got to know him because his mom claimed to have been assaulted, but never reported it because her friend Jane had something of something of something, and typed the guy's name in, found him on Facebook, and I admit I sent a mean message, but I also wasn't told about the claimed assaults until later. It was just ridiculous amount of drama. Anyway, later wound up meeting his biological dad and his two daughters, or the dad's daughters, two redheads, gingers, whatever. One older, one younger. It's around Father's Day time frame. And I purposefully did not sign the card that was from Phillip. I signed a separate card because I didn't think that it made sense for me to sign the one with him being respectful of that being the first Father's Day together and all that. But in reference to the field trip, he, as in Phillip said he needed to get a blood test. He had an appointment or something. So he got his blood test, and I got a phone call right when he was inside about the school losing my daughter, the field trip that I wanted to go on. I had a feeling, but anyway, didn't think anything of it, because as many times as I've had my blood drawn, realistically, anybody who's been in the military understands you get your blood drawn a whole bunch of times. Anyway, then after my daughter was in Denton Behavioral Health for the longest amount of time, she was moved into a residential treatment. Phillip, by the way, had said that we could sue the school district, and I was like, what is this we? She is not your daughter. He is not your son. They never were, they never will be. They're mine. So don't ever, ever, ever reference my children as if you have any rights to them, because you don't. And he backed off after that. Ish. So, had gone to the sanctuary with him a couple of times, and there was a photo session at one point. Did a session where I was using my floggers that I had custom made on him from Houston, and then did a photo shoot with Sam Lewis, because Philly said he wanted to, and I was like, well, I've already done a few with Sam, so I'm sure he won't mind. He likes doing photography, he can do stuff. So got a few pictures of my finger in the D ring, and at some point, as I was trying to take care of all that afterwards, going back and forth between the hospital in Merrill Creek and back to Carrollton, it was just not worth the drive to keep the house in Carrollton. So I put the house on the market with a realtor who didn't wind up selling the house, so I had to go with a different realtor who did, and she did it quickly. Much less than the asking price, but needed to get it done because I didn't need any extra additional stress than I was already dealing with. Not forgetting the amount of pain I deal with on a daily basis. So, I had already been going to Club Femme DFW for a while. Several munches and then later events. And I think it was right before moving. Went to an event at Matrice Renee's house and Jason's house. And because it was in the second story. That's where it was. He had said, after the commentary and Reverend, and I didn't remember that comment until much later because there's a lot going on. And saying, not forgetting the astral travel stuff. So I'm just saying, like, a lot I didn't need anymore. Would like to be able to relax. Anyway, so right before Matrix Renee's party, for the community, not a Club Femme event. Let me specify that, because there were the two different ones. So Phillip had said, hey, we could be a power couple. And I was like, what's a power couple? And he said, you know, like what Renee and Jason are. And I'm like, I don't understand. And he was like, you know, Renee and Jason. I'm like, you mean Matrix Renee and Jason? And he was like, oh, well, we're just talking about it. And I'm like, yeah, Matrix Renee and Jason. You don't know Renee in that way, and I'm not trying to be rude, but like just saying. And I don't Matrix Renee and Jason, because he said he was a switch, and then like later in Cedar Park attempted to be all dommy, and I was like, yeah, no. You could be dommy to somebody else. You will not be dommy to me. I'll let you know that. And so that just... Anyway, at that time it didn't make sense. Had a bit of a tiff, because it was like, I don't understand what you mean by power couple. And then realistically, what would you have to offer that would make you even slightly considerable to be in that type of a way? I mean, not to sound snobby, but, you know, you said you once were in a band and you are no longer in that band and you didn't continue on with your music career, correct? And he said, yeah. And I was like, so what would you have, like if in the description that he gave, what would you have that would be worthwhile? And again, I don't want to be a power couple in reference to the lifestyle, because that's just not my personal like cup of tea. It's not a bad thing. It's just that's not personal preference. Like, but you know, what if that were to be? Would you be worthy of? And he was just like, well, you know, like I had done this and I had done that. And I'm like, so you are a has-been, but never was in the lifestyle. And he got really upset about that. And I was just like, I don't care. I'm not the type, no. So at Matrix Renee's event, I did describe this in a prior video where he was inside on his techie phone thing, and then the feelings and weirdness and didn't understand, and then there's a banging at the door and kind of etherically guided some females to get away from their master bedroom door so that way they could talk and have a minute or two. And if hypothetically later they looked back and realized how quiet it was, despite how loud the party actually was, did what I could to give that silence. It's just a way or two. So anyway, Phillip was laughing and I was infuriated, but I also didn't, a lot I was dealing with. And so going back to having to move, went through a leasing company to get the house in Cedar Park, wrote a letter to the owners, tried to make sure everything was taken care of back and forth. That was an issue later. And while I was in Cedar Park signing the paperwork, I get a phone call later about the police showing up to my house in Carrollton. Nobody told me, to this day, nobody told me what occurred at my house in Carrollton when the police arrived to my house. My biological mother, biological father, and Phillip Armstead did not ever tell me what occurred that day. And everybody said it was something that I didn't need to worry about because I was already dealing with enough. And I was like, yeah, the police officers, like law enforcement showing up to my house, that's kind of a concern to me. And they said that it was something to do with me moving, and I was like, what does me moving for my daughter and son have to do with anything? Want to tell me that? No, we dealt with it. Oh, okay. Obviously not. Anyway, on the way after going back from Cedar Park to Carrollton, I went and packed the rest of the stuff. And then there was just out of the blue, a rainstorm. And my biological father was driving the U-Haul truck. And Philly was driving one car. I was driving another car. And one of the windshield wipers stopped in Philly's car. He couldn't drive it, which was technically my car, but he was driving it. And had to get a hotel room because of the torrential downpour, and ordered Domino's pizza. And then later on, the pizza girl decided to call my cell phone because Phillip was nice to her on the phone, supposedly. And Phillip said, well, he worked at that time he was working at Pizza Hut as a manager, and he had to transfer. And after moving to Cedar Park, he had already told me that he claimed that he was a professional gamer, and for like a Halo team or something. I don't know. I didn't know that was a thing. I mean, I knew video games were big, and this is no offense to techie guys or who are into video games. I just didn't know that like you could be a professional video gamer. Though I never saw him ever go to a competition, but I also figured maybe like this was the competition. I don't know. Like I don't understand that stuff. So he said in Cedar Park, that would be when he told me about, when literally the day he told me about what he did at Chase Bank with the flies showing up, were the same day or within a 24 or 72 hour time period. The day of him telling me about the bank accounts that he had access to. And I didn't understand that. And then a bunch of flies showed up. And then one day, it was after he got back from Pizza Hut, and then showed up, like, he said that, like, he didn't bump into anything, and his back looked like it had been scratched up because of, similarly to the view, I would have thought that the claw marks at the bottom of Chandler Mountain would look. During a different description, my ex-in-laws. But yeah, that was all within the same week. And then, and those scratches came back at random until he got out of my house. And I had already, like, told him it was over. Like, it's over. Like, why are you still, like, here? Why don't you go back to Dallas? Because I don't want you here. And he wouldn't. And so then there was a point where we had done a scene where I had him bent over. I spanked him a few times. And then all of a sudden he started crying. It's like, ugh. All right. So he wouldn't stop crying. Phillip Armstead just would not stop crying. He curled up into this little ball and is in the fetal position, just crying and crying and crying. And I was like, you need to stop. Like, I didn't hit you that hard. I didn't hit you that hard at all. Like, at all. As a reference point, I hit harder than him. Anyway, like, and Pete is essentialist, so, like, hitting, just throw that out, like, and so, like, he cried, and it was through the pants, so even, like, softer by that. And he's crying, and he literally cried, Susan, why won't you care about me the same way as your children? Are you kidding me? And so I picked him up, I put him in the shower, I turned the water on. I was like, no. If you are coherent enough to say that to me, knowing what is going on, no. So just turned the water on and walked away. I was not dealing with that. I had no patience for that. I had enough I was dealing with. So he had gone to some TNG events. That includes the discussion with the Munch, and then the whatever, and then I wound up, he also came with me for this tattoo. The first time it was worked on before I went to another tattoo shop. He, as in Phillip Armstead, and my tattoo artist were debating. Now, at first, I have to explain that when I get a tattoo, I meditate. That's just what I do. Because each tattoo has its own specific purpose, own specific meaning. And it is partially, yes, for a memory aspect, but it is also spiritual. It's like 99.999% spiritual, and then the other part is for like a memory. And so when I first, started getting the tattoo work done, I'm meditating, doing my thing, and then like 2.5 hours apparently went by, and I got out of the meditation because I'm feeling the tattoo artist literally like grinding on this hand. And anybody who has a hand tattoo, male or female, you know that hurts. It's a sensitive part of your hand. Just saying. And so, what is going on? And Phillip Armstead is arguing with my tattoo artist about politics. They disagreed. And I was like, this is not the time for this to be. No. You, no. And then because he wouldn't shut up and stop, I was like, all right, well, I already paid in full, and, I just, no, I can't, I'll get another tattoo artist to finish the work. And I did. I found a Dovetail Tattoo, and it was an all-female shop when I found it, and they finished it up, and it was great. She did wonderful. So, I mean, not that the male didn't do wonderful. He did, but, just anybody who's gotten tattoos, they understand. And so, or does tattoos, they understand. And so there was that. And he went to several, as in Phillip Armstead had gone to a couple of Club Femme events because he wouldn't leave. He would not get out and leave me alone. So then by that time, I had already booked for myself to perform at the Uniform Fetish Ball. And I talked with the people I knew, and I was like, yeah, this guy, like, he showed up with me. He's not with me, but we're not, like, anything. He's not anything. He's just here. I mean, just here. And so, if I was supposed to be paid, I never did get paid at all. I didn't even know that that was a possibility until years later. Or whatever the exotic Easter event was. I didn't know about that. So, and then the same thing with, like, the Glory Hole Girls event in Dallas where I did the belly dancing in the two different outfits, the red and the blue. The blue one had the ISIS wings. And I had tried meeting with a lawyer, but multiple times. Didn't wind up working out. And then, whatchamacallit, that lawyer actually said that his son had been left unattended at a different field trip back in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. And, like, we just talked, and his slave, or, well, also wife, and in the BDSM way, let me clarify, and then secretary as well, had done, we just talked, and he was like, yeah, I can't help you because there's too much stuff for what is going on. It's like, all right, well. But then I never got any assistance. Anyway, oh yeah, so it wasn't until finally, like, getting rid of him, when he wound up telling me, which I don't know if he told me this to try to, like, want me to stay, but that wasn't going to happen. Just completely backfired. So I had already broken up with him. Like, it was multiple times. It was like, not that we were really dating, because we didn't actually consummate or anything like that. I was like, just go. Like, why are you here? I don't understand. You weren't invited to go with me. You weren't, ironically, like my Medal of Honor art project, nobody was invited, just all that. Just, except for my son to go with the drums. And so, I had, get out, 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 get out. And at some point he had said that he wound up coming up positive for herpes, genital herpes. And I was like, oh, I'm glad, like, I don't have to worry about that, but I'm going to go get tested just in case, because no. And so, and I'm clear, it's been since 2010, I obviously don't have it. Been cleared every time, so. Though I do admit, like, I think I put the wrong number in finding a silver lining when discussing the ocular aspect because of the staph infection when I was in the hospital during my coma. But that, number one, was not genital, it was ocular, which is different. And then number two, I'm still clear of that. So, Anyway, I don't know why that would have been a somehow thought of being together, no. But if Phillip Makowski and Phillip Olmsted are essentially a 2-in-1, and or the Robert Dombowski is a 3-in-1, just, like, what part of no don't you understand? Like, I mean, I don't know how many times I had to try to tell him to get out, and he just wouldn't. And, you know, every time he threw a little temper tantrum, it's like, you do realize you're pissing off my dead ex-husband. And he was like, ha ha ha, funny joke. And I'm like, yeah, no, you don't understand. Like, it's not a joke, and there's always truth to every joke. And I'm letting you know, like, those marks on your back that show up anytime you leave the house in Cedar Park and nowhere near me, they show up. And then you come near me and you show me, but like you don't feel the same like um yeah, you like I don't have the words that you'd understand what pact we had made. So you can say it's a joke, but remember, truth behind every joke. Just saying. And so, at some point, I don't remember what it was, but I was like, you need to explain something to James, or how am I going to explain something to James? I can't remember what it was, but he would not leave. And then I literally had to drive him to his dad's house, and it was in a trailer park in, well, I don't want to say trailer park, it's like a manufactured home, but a bunch of them together. And, well, Phillip said that's what it was called. And so, took it back there, and then when I showed up, you know, dropping Phillip off to get him, his dad and I started talking. We had already talked the few times we had met before, and I had, in 2008, many years ago, since it's 2020 at this point, or 2020, there was a car accident, semi-truck accident, that occurred when I was looking at purchasing my house in Carrollton. And I was going southbound. I had a really bad case of insomnia. My headaches were barely migraines, but I couldn't be in the hotel room at the Comfort Suites. I think, ironically, that would be when I got my first I think it was when I got my first tattoo by that Navy guy, and my cat tattoo, and took off, left. I was driving my 2008 or 2009 yellow VW Bug convertible. I called her Bumblebee because she had the convertible top, which was black. It looked like, you know, a bumblebee. And then black leather interior, so, you know, whether the top was up or down, it looked like a bumblebee from overhead, I would guesstimate. And then I put little flowers on the tail lights, and I had little lashes on the the front. And yeah, I called her Bumblebee. I'll go over that later. Anyway, like, yeah, I called her Bumblebee. Anyway, whatchamacallit, and then, you know, with bright red hair, it would almost look like she had to do a patch, and don't mind me. Anyway, or a laser beam, whichever you want to prefer. But anyway, when that occurred with it was like 2:30 in the morning when I left Carrollton. I admit I speed. There is obviously a record of my speeding tickets, but I pay them, so there is that. I mean, anyway, there was I had this weird feeling so those who know driving late at night and early morning, usually it's only semi-truck drivers on the road, or people who are traveling from one spot to another. And so it was just miles of semi-trucks in both lanes going southbound. And I saw up ahead, like, one after the other, the four-ways just And like each of the semi trucks, they're back, and I'm like, oh, this not gonna be good. And like, and they're all slowing down, and so um, technically an illegal move, but it's better than being smushed. Like, ironically, it was a VW bug, and you know, it's better than being smushed like a bug. Because the semi truck that I was behind had jackknifed, and the semi truck behind me, when I looked back in the rearview mirror, um, his front bumper looked like it was less than like 12 inches from where the semi truck trailer part was. So I was like, yeah. So, you know, like, at least there's that. And so got to the front. His dad and I talked about this, or the biological dad. I don't want to be rude to the stepdad because he did what he could with, you know, that. And so he and I were talking about it. I was like, yeah, you know, and he was like, I heard stories about that. I was like, oh, yeah. He goes, could you tell me about it? I was like, oh, well, yeah. So, you know, there were the semi trucks and all that sort of stuff. And then when I got to the front, pulled off to the side, and because there was a semi truck on the median that was facing the correct way, and then there was a upside down, twisted and turned, facing the opposite way, dump truck, and got out, called 911, that whole thing. Couldn't give the 911 operator enough points to like triangulate where we were. Gave the cell phone I had to the semi truck driver that was walking towards me, and that because he knew like better of the area, because I guessed at least. And then yelled to the semi truck that people were helping that husband and wife out of the cab to turn off the engine because of seeing like smoke plumes coming out of it and some chemical stuff. It's like, all right. And then ran over to the upside down, wrong way facing dump truck, and there was a guy standing on top of the door because of it, the way the cab was laying, and just jumped up, and he was like, yeah, the guy's not able to get out of the cab, he's not conscious. So first I reached in and turned off the engine, and you know, there was chemicals and sparks and all that sort of stuff, and then, you know, slid down underneath, essentially to the passenger side, and, you know, unbuckled the seat belt after angling him where the guy on top could grab the arms. And I was like, all right, now that he's unbuckled all that stuff and the engine's off, you know, you pull, I'll push, 1, 2, 3, and got him out, and then pulled myself up. And then that guy and I, firemen, carried that semi-truck driver behind my bug that I called Bumblebee. And, well, she had 2 nicknames. She had Zippy and she had Bumblebee. But she was a Zippy Bumblebee. So, she had a turbo engine. And, irony. Anyway, so, I can move fast. I'm not a car, but I have made the satirical comment about my first car that I've ever had is a 1982 shoemobile with automatic kneecaps. And so, you know, for those who are into cars, they get that reference. And so, you know, my feet, for those who don't understand that, that's my feet, they wear shoes and stuff. Anyway, so I actually had to explain that to people who claimed that they were into cars, and then like, Anyway, so then the semi-truck driver that I had given the phone to, he gave it to me, and he was like, the female on the other side doesn't know what she's talking about. And I'm like, apparently that female knows nothing. And I already had tried, and then I got so frustrated trying to explain to that female, who was not like, are you sure? And it's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he needs medical attention. Like, I mean, is it normal to be spitting out teeth? Is it normal to like be laying off to one side, or is it more normal to be like sitting up straight and conscious? Yeah, I don't think it takes a head injury to figure it out. And the 911 operator female got a little miffy, and it's like, that's nice. I just don't. So then the medical crew arrived and stuff like that after I had used the cell phone to call. I had the guy, I got him to wake up. I'm like, hey, wake up. I need you to like dial whatever number you can remember. And he dialed the phone number, left a voicemail or answering machine. I think it was answering machine because I heard a beep. But anyway, told him about their family member or friend that was in the accident and stuff like that. Didn't know where the medical personnel were going to take them, but at least whenever they got the message that they'd be able to do what was necessary to find their guy. And so Phillip Makowski's dad said he heard about like that but didn't know who it was. And I'm like, yeah, just me. Same haircut, except now it's waxed. Well, not right now. Now it's shaven, but it's higher up, and it's almost like high and tight. Irony. But, yeah, like I told him that I had to put my arms out to the side because, like, apparently there's a bunch of chemicals from, I mean, it makes sense, there were chemicals from the semi-truck that were just kind of everywhere. And, there were sparks and stuff. I was like, well, it didn't burn, and, my tattoos are fine, so that's okay. I don't know if, like, my upbringing has anything to do with that, because that was before scuba diving, and, because that was 2008, I didn't start scuba diving until 2009, and so, maybe that has something to do with, like, the way I was raised and my biological mother being like, hey, there's a pool in the backyard. And it's like, is the pool supposed to have red water? Oh, it's no big deal. Just don't come back, like, but go swimming. And it's like, oh, okay. It seems a little weird. Really weird, like, but now go swimming. It doesn't look like ocean water. It looks like red water. No big deal. Okay. Sure. I mean, it was deep enough that I could actually, like, dive into the water. But, it is what it is. There was a well in the house, or well outside of the house. It was, the house in New Jersey had when you faced the house from Church Road, before apparently it burned down in a fire or something like that. But anyway, you face the house from Church Road, 46, and there's used to be the driveway that led out to Church Road, but the construction company for the subdivision built in stuff, and they wanted to purchase part of the land, so the deal was whatever it was, but partially that the driveway would be built, and my biological father, some of his friends, and I built that 5-car garage with the shed attached. I got to learn all sorts of stuff. But anyway, learned how to lay down rebar and not use any fillers and do it right and level out the foundation, do the framework correctly. But anyway, so Yellowknife was later put on and or in the area, and then the driveway went in from Yellowknife. But it originally went out to Church Road. And then there was the house after the shed, and it was originally an aluminum corrugated shed, but then rebuilt and stuff like that. And then to the left of the house was the well that was in an octagon shape. And before the well had any issues with lily of the valleys, like growing all around them, around that area, I got in trouble. I thought it would be fun to see how strong I was. And so there was this huge concrete octagon shaped, enclosure to, not go down the well. And it was right before Patricia was born. And, you know, I walk out there, and my biological father, Mike, he's doing the stuff in the garden. I go, hey, Dad, look what I can do. I did this before. And he was like, what did you do before? And I did, look what I can do. And he was like, put that down. And I was like, all right. And then it like split in two. And I wasn't allowed to do that again. He was mad at me because he had to push the two pieces together. He's like, really, 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 you just picked that up, no problem. I'm like, what up, Dad? Like, I just, what, is this a big deal? And he's just like, oh my God, I can't believe you just did that. And then I got in trouble for doing it, and that is what it is. But yeah, so, you know, Phillip Onsted's dad and I spoke about that, and my dad was really, 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 really mad that I, you know, cracked the cover to the well, because, you know, it was like concrete that was like this thick. I mean, realistically, how heavy could that be? I don't know. Apparently not heavy enough for me not to pick it up and be like, look what I can do. Like, look. Look, I can hold it. Oh, what's in there? Put that down. Oh, I wanted to see what was in there. I already did it before. I lifted it up and looked in. I didn't realize it went down. So I just wanted to see how strong I could be. And, you know, apparently strong enough to, like, lift it up and be like, look. What's the big deal? It's just a lid to a well. How heavy can they be? And then, you know, go inside the house. That was not fine. So that's what I gotta say about all of that. You guys have a good one. Share this video, like it, encourage others to watch it, because I think some people might want to see this video. So, have a good one.